Milk. It's one of the oldest commodities that most of us use daily. It's a natural product that has many versatile uses, including being the main ingredient of cheese. In the Isle of Man, our cheeses are one of the delicacies that fill us with pride. The flavours, texture, and mostly the fresh Manx milk that's used to create the product. Where the Isle of Man Creamery's products differ to many of its competitors is that the cows used for milk are mainly grass-fed, which in this day and age is quite the rarity. But not only do the animals benefit from the Creamery's guidelines, as do farmers. For the Isle of Man Creamery is not owned or run by Isle of Man government. It stands on its own 2 feet as a cooperative run and owned by the dairy farmers of the Isle of Man. From humble beginnings in 1919, the old creamery was housed where you'll now find residential dwellings in Spring Gardens, Douglas. It then turned its hand to cheese making in the 1920s when Gladys Davies moved to the island from the northwest of England. It was Gladys who knew her way around a block of cheese, and she created her farmhouse cheddar, which became the stuff of legends. Less than 15 years later, in 1934, a monumental move was made at Tynwald. This was when the Farmers' Cooperative was founded and passed. A Farmers' Cooperative is an organisation that is owned and operated by their members, in this case the dairy farmers who produce milk for the creamery. Agricultural cooperatives unite single growers to boost their business productivity, increase yields, and give the farmers a real say in how their product reaches the marketplace. Farmers in a co-op make decisions together and share profits among all members rather than outside investors. Income from farmer-owned co-ops is reinvested into the business or returned to the members.
In the 1930s, there were literally hundreds of dairy farms on the Isle of Man. Some of them might have had 3 cows, some of them might have had 20 cows. Very, very small in comparison to today's cow herds. And they were all competing against each other. So the farmers then got together and formed a cooperative under an Act of Tynwald in 1934. And that Act is still in place today, and we are a true cooperative of now 28 dairy farms on the Isle of Man. And those farms are much bigger than they were in the 1930s. We have got from 60, 80 cows herd to 600 cows in a herd, so, and all points in between. Typically the herds have about 130 to 150 animals in them, and they're spread right across the island, but we're proud to say that none of the milk travels any more than 15 miles to get to the creamery.
Well, for an island like this, it's absolutely vital that every farmer works together in an organisation. We're a very small community. There's only 27 of us left, and a cooperative works really well in our situation. If we had multiple buyers of our product, I think we'd all be fighting with one another like it used to be back in 1934 when Isle of Man Creamery was first invented, when everybody was fighting with each other to sell that drop of milk, and nobody was gaining from that. But at least now we've got a stable situation where everybody works together, and it's better for the public as well because they've got a high quality product to buy because we have a tremendously well run creamery.
The cooperative as it operates offers quite a degree of stability to where we have a marketplace and how our product is ultimately marketed to the public.
And we all hear cooperative being thrown about, but actually what does that really mean, and what does that mean to local farmers?
It just means that we are working together to provide that continuity into the marketplace and going forward, hopefully to continue to provide us with a sustainable place for our output to go to.
The cooperative's there and gives all the dairy farmers on the island the same share of the income, the same milk price across the island, reducing, I suppose, competition between each farmer, but the difference on a small scale like the island, with competition between each farmers, you eventually end up with only 2 farmers, say. So it's keeping the number of farms viable and giving everybody a fair share of the returns.
I think the benefits are all around the ownership of the business. Because the farmers actually own the business, the profits effectively go straight back to the farmers. There are no shareholders, no external shareholders of the business, and it means that we are focused on maximising the return for the farmers' efforts and their efforts in producing a high quality milk for us to process.
As well as the farmers being shareholders of the creamery, they also have a say in the marketing tools used within the cooperative, one of which being the grass-fed scheme and the opportunities that brings for business, along with the positive impact on the livestock.
Well, we're lucky as a cooperative we can choose the way we run the creamery, and hence the way farmers react to that that sort of demand. And as a marketing tool, grass-fed is particularly important. And as an island that can grow grass and not much else, it's a perfect place to keep grass-fed dairy cows. The climate's mild, we can grow grass because we get plenty of rain, and consequently it works both ways. People who buy our cheese, especially in America and Australia even, throughout Europe and Canada, they like the idea of cows that actually live outdoors for most of their lives and eat grass. And when we come to do marketing, we've got the most beautiful backdrop of the Isle of Man to photograph the animals in the fields, and the story as well of a small farmer group working together for the common good. It really appeals, so it makes a really good sales pitch.
Average days at grass to fit with the creamery's grass-fed scheme is a minimum of 200 days. Ourselves, we're looking to graze our cows from the first week in February right the way out through November, so long as the weather's with us, of course. So we're looking at being in excess of 240 days per annum at grass.
The creamery do the grass-fed, which is cows are outside grazing grass for a minimum of over 200 days a year, and again on a welfare basis. That is the cows outside, getting some fresh air, getting some exercise, not just inside sheds.
Well, there's lots of different systems worldwide. I've seen a lot of cows in America as well, where the only option is to keep their cows inside. Obviously the animal welfare is still really high, they're well looked after, but it's just a different system. They have the food all brought to them, and they just kind of eat and sleep and go about their lives in the sheds. But here it's very different. We're like on an island, the climate is perfect for growing grass. It's very expensive to import any feed items that we all know about. So growing as much as we possibly can, as naturally as we can, and utilising what we've got on an island is just really what we aim to do, and is our number one goal really, to get the most out of our cows and our land this way.
I think the main difference in Manx farming compared to dairy farming in other areas is the grass-fed accreditation. We first saw the expression pasture-fed and grass-fed in other markets like the United States, and that was quite a revelation to us, because we just assumed, well, aren't all cows grass-fed? But when you look at farming in other areas, there are an awful lot of other aspects to the cow's diet. Here we have an independently accredited grass-fed certification, and that looks at what the cows actually eat, and they eat 75–80% of their diet is grass, which is what is the most natural feed for cows. We also commit to the cows being out on pasture, which is where they belong. They don't belong in big factory type farms. They belong out in the fields, and we guarantee that our cows are out at least 200 days per annum. So there can be days where it's actually just not healthy or pleasant for the animals to be out in the open, but we do stipulate that for our grass-fed accreditation, the cows have got to be out for a minimum of 200 days.
Farming often gets painted in a dim light with environmentalists. However, the Isle of Man Creamery and its farmers are constantly being innovative when it comes to sustainability and the ever-changing climate.
We're always trying to work with nature. At the end of the day, the land is in the condition it's in because it's been farmed by us on this farm for 3 generations. You know, we're always trying to make the farm as good as it can be, but you know, we're working with nature, and we're sequestering carbon in the process as well. It's just kind of win-win that I can see. If there was no cows here and no livestock, the farm would just be getting ploughed year on year on year. The soil structure would be awful. There'd be no worms. There'd be no biodiversity in it. It would just be a complete disaster compared to what we have now.
Rob Cool and his brother David won a national award for their environmental efforts.
The award itself recognises how we kind of keep one eye on nature alongside trying to run a sustainable business. You know, that's the basics of what the award was for. It has, I think it was 12 or 15 different categories that were broken down that we were judged upon, and it's all sort of how you work alongside nature and how you kind of keep looking for the next steps towards helping nature alongside the cows, etc., etc. So.
There has been some research done recently which has compared the carbon footprint of dairy farms on the island versus dairy farms off the island, and we were very, very pleased to find out that the carbon footprint of dairy farms on the island are about 2/3 of the carbon footprint of dairy farms in the rest of the UK. A lot of that has to do with the grass-fed nature of the farms on the Isle of Man. By necessity, the farmers on the Isle of Man have had to be very, very smart with their operations and how they farm, and they've been very clever at producing as much milk as possible through grass production.
The Creamery are working in a world market. It's a very tough environment. They're working against or competing with other lot bigger players, but to compete in that market they've been very innovative over the years. They were one of the first creameries to get into the mature and vintage cheddar markets. They were one of the first creameries to do the added ingredient cheeses, and they've been the first creamery to do the fully recyclable cartons. So hopefully that's all keeping them ahead of the game, in effect.
We were the first dairy in the UK to introduce plant-based cartons, and that was quite a few years ago. And those cartons basically have no oil-based plastics in them. Even the caps are based on a sugar-based polymer. The lining of the carton is a sugar-based polymer, and the card comes from replaced forestry. So every single thing about the carton is as environmentally friendly as it possibly can be. The fact that we stopped using poly bottles meant that instead of having a container coming over on the ferry every week with plastic poly bottles, it meant that we get a container every 6-7 weeks now with flat packed cartons. So our use of fossil fuels for the transport of our raw materials and our packaging materials has reduced dramatically.
The obvious benefit of buying a locally produced product is the lack of food miles, but along with this, the traceability of the products.
Well, at the end of the day, it's, what are we, 7 miles from the Creamery. You can have your milk out and delivered to a shop for all less than sort of 15 miles of food miles, which in this sort of day and age is massive, really. I think there is no substitute for low food miles, and that's where people need to be sort of backing everything local, whether that's Isle of Man Creamery stuff, whether that's from Isle of Man meats or whether that's from local veg growers. I think everyone really needs to sort of push as much local as they can.
Food miles has got to be a massive one, hasn't it, in this day and age? It's that tank is picking up, I think it's probably its maximum journeys 20 miles back to the creamery, and it's packaged there and put out to the local shops. It's probably less than 30 miles most people's milk has travelled before it arrives on their doorstep, and in this day and age I think that's quite a massive thing, and something people should, the Manx public in general are very good to support the products, and as I say, they're excellent products.
I think it's incredibly environmentally friendly. You can't really get much fresher than it's literally on your doorstep produced. The milk tanker comes and collects our milk once a day, brings it to the creamery, which is 10 miles away. And yeah, it's all processed there and delivered fresh to your door.
There are many benefits to the cooperative, one of which being the strong brand identity that the creamery has created, which enables it to access markets that individual farmers would never be able to reach.
Well, the first thing that we did was we made sure that our product is among the very, very best in our industry. We are set up to manufacture what we call hard-pressed cheeses, which are things like cheddar, double Gloucester and red Leicester. And as a business, we've won awards at the Global Cheese Awards, British Cheese Awards, World Cheese Awards. So we've got a great reputation in terms of the quality of our product. And that is a little bit of a door opener. You obviously have to go and knock on those doors and speak to retailers, whether it's in the UK or Ireland or in the USA. And then it's about building the relationship, building the trust, and doing the right branding of your product to appeal to consumers in a particular market. In the US, we use the grass-fed accreditation very prominently on our branding.
How have the US reacted to grass-fed? Because obviously there, a lot of them are in sheds and just fed alfalfa, and it must be quite shocking to them to then realise actually there's a product out there that these animals are mainly grass-fed.
I had an experience recently. I was standing in several public supermarkets actually last month, and the number of people who walked past and said, that product there, that's the grass-fed one, that's the one that I always buy. And we were delighted that was our product. So it's sitting in a dairy cabinet with lots of other cheese from all over the world, literally Australia, New Zealand, Canada and the US. And out of all of those areas, a lot of the customers were very knowledgeable that that was a grass-fed product. And that really reflects how consumers nowadays want their food to be as natural as possible. People don't like the thought of their food being over-processed.
I think the creamery and the producers have been doing an incredible job. I mean, there are less than 30 producers now, and yet the brand is so iconic and well known all over the island, and in the UK and further afield as well. And I think that cooperative setup has been enormously beneficial, both from a reputational perspective, but also for the producers. The producers have an input into how things operate. The directors are producers, and they also communicate. So the producers, they have that level of communication with the creamery that we don't really see anywhere else.
The creamery is completely owner operated and ran, so it's completely independent. We don't rely or have any government subvention, so it's different from the Isle of Man meats and the flour mill. So it's a sense of pride in the product and seeing the process right through as farmers and directors of the company.
clear to see the importance of the Isle of Man Creamery and how it runs as a cooperative. But what would the future look like if it didn't exist?
It wouldn't work at all. I really believe that we only sell 6.5 million litres of liquid milk to the public on the island and about 200 tonnes of cheese. Everything else gets exported. So if we were all fighting for that 6.5, 10 million litres of local sales, well, we'd all be out of business straight away.
Well, to be honest, there just wouldn't be one as a start off. If you ended up with a third party manufacturer in, really you could end up with unrealistic cost of production to, you know, on-farm costs. It would just be sort of undoable really, because there'd be someone else trying to take a piece of the pie.
Well, the biggest challenges would be finding markets. You would most likely end up with 2 or 3 farms doing the more profitable bit, which is home delivery of fresh milk. But for an individual farm to go into the other side, which you need large equipment and larger volumes of milk, which is the cheese making the island does, would be nearly impossible on an individual basis on the island. So if the cooperative wasn't there, the industry would be greatly reduced.
Instantly you'd see food prices go up in the shop. I mean, look what happened with Ramsey Bakery once that went. I mean, everyone thought that we were going to end up with cheap bread, and it doesn't happen. When things have to come on the boat, it's definitely not cheaper. We're only lining the pockets of someone else, really.
Well, very important to us, obviously, but I think to the wider economy as well. There's quite a number of jobs within the creamery. I think there's 50 plus jobs within the creamery itself, plus deliveries and shop workers, and you know there's quite a wider benefit to continuing to support a local product, and you know it's.
Dairy markets are very volatile, but when things do go right, then the profits are the profits are reinvested into the farmers and into the local community. It doesn't go off to any kind of shareholders or anything off-seas. It's all local and all Manx based. So yeah, the cycle just keeps on going round in a circle, and because it's a cooperative, that's why we have those advantages that we really need to keep a hold of and be proud of.
Milk is such a nutritious, basic, stable product, and if we can't do something as basic as that, then we're really in trouble. I mean, thankfully, after the main bakery on the island ceased to manufacture a few years ago, another couple of bakeries are trying to kind of meet that demand for locally baked bread, and you know, God forbid that we would ever, you know, not be producing our own milk, bread, you know, cereals and that type of thing on the Isle of Man. That would be a real worry.